Welcome, everybody. Once again, I am George Rogers, your host today here on HR Tech Talks. And as always, I'm excited about our guests, but I do want to give a couple of brief announcements. Just a reminder, and we encourage everybody as you're joining with us today, chime in, share the chat with your network so that we can grow our network as well. And I believe this conversation today would be very transparent, if I can throw in a little hint to our audience, for all people, especially within our HR network. And so definitely want to join in on the conversation. Let us know where you're from. Drop in the chat where you're joining us from, like and comment, and be a part of the conversation with myself and our special guest today. As always, we want to encourage you to not forget, as we are doing these HR Tech Talks monthly here, whether it's myself or my good friend Ben Eubanks, we encourage you to join in on hrtechtalks.org. This will give you an opportunity to be notified whenever we go live as well and catch up on that. Also, we're excited because HR Tech Awards, here we go, HR Tech Talks, HR Tech Awards, are also being in a wraps. And so we're excited to talk and discuss about HR Tech Awards for 2024 for all those great companies out there that are doing great work, whether small, medium, or large businesses and organizations. hrtechawards.org. You can go there for more information. Check that out. And we're going to be excited to be announcing that here coming soon with you, our guests, our audience, and those great companies that are chiming in. Speaking of HR Tech Awards, our special guest here today, without further ado, I want to join me today, is one of our former and recent current, however you want to look at it, HR Tech Award winners for 2023 with Trusaic. And so I want to welcome my new friend, Mr. John. John, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing well, George. Thanks so much for having us on here, and we really appreciate the opportunity to connect. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Well, for our audience that may not know what Trusaic is about, the company itself, or even yourself, mind just opening up just a little bit, just share a little bit about yourself and your company.
Absolutely. So Trusaic's an HR technology company. We're headquartered in LA. We service customers globally. We have a few core lines of business, and our fastest growing line of business is the workplace equity category. So we provide technology and services solutions that help do mission critical employment activities, like ensure that companies are paying their employees fairly and providing just fair, equitable career and employment experiences through the higher performance, promotion, and retention process. So basically holistically all the way through that employment life cycle, providing analytics and kind of policy, program, and strategy advisory services to help employers make sure that they're treating their employees fairly.
Yeah, let's jump right into this topic, if we will. Can we discuss a little bit about the importance of that pay transparency, especially in today's workplace, and how it can contribute to a more equitable and inclusive organization culture, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely, George. And I think that for us, we always like to take a step back and just think about the origin of the pay transparency, the laws. And so essentially, there's been for decades, equitable pay laws on the books that apply to most employers. But the reality is there hasn't been a kind of accountability mechanism, right? And so recently, what you've been seeing is proliferation of pay transparency and pay reporting laws that act as that enforcement kind of accountability mechanism. And the reality is, employees, applicants, partners, governments want to understand what's going on within organizations, right? Investors. And so organizations are being placed in a situation now where they have to be very transparent with their pay ranges, as kind of the most prime example. But often cases, the transparency extends beyond that. And so what's critical for them is to be able to have the deep ability to explain their pay and just general career and employment decisions to their employees and their broader stakeholders, that list of stakeholders that I listed previously. And so that kind of raises the threshold of responsibility and rigor with which employers must be able to explain their internal policies and decisions.
Yeah. So what are some of the common challenges, if you will, that companies may encounter when implementing, some pay transparency initiatives, and how can those challenges be effectively, addressed to ensure some of that successful outcomes that you desire to have for your clients.
Absolutely. Well, I think that there is a few common challenges, and one is just where do I get started, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes the process of simply posting pay ranges publicly is the simplest part. Frankly, it's the tip of the iceberg, because what that sets off is a cascade of internal needs for employers. Because what's going to happen next is there's going to be all kinds of questions around those ranges, and there's going to be all kinds of questions around why different folks are kind of dispersed throughout different places in those pay range continuums. And so, there's data that needs to be gathered. Oftentimes, organizations don't have all of the data that they need in the short term. So they need to be thinking strategically and planning to say, well, what policies or processes do we need to enact and put in place right now to put us in a position in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to have better explainability around our compensation, as we seek to demonstrate to our employees and to applicants and broader stakeholders that we do take this seriously. And then from an analytics perspective, doing things like analyzing pay to ensure that it's equitable is complex for a couple of reasons. One is because of just the kind of statistical mathematical complexity that's inherent in that type of a calculation. But the other is the regulatory jurisdictional kind of framework that gets overlaid on top of that. And for many businesses, they're doing business in not just one geography, they're doing business in many geographies. And so you have this kind of interlapping, intersecting kind of mesh and web of regulatory frameworks that needs to be reconciled. And so that can be complex. And all the while, employers are just looking to continue to be able to do the basics well, right? Communicate to employees that they care deeply. And so this adds an entire kind of new threshold of burden for them to navigate.
Yeah. When I think about that employer and employee relationship, and oftentimes, especially for those HR leaders and managers, directors that are dealing with a lot of these complexities, but also understand they're also kind of torn, right? They're employees too, and here they are with the messaging. I'm huge on culture. A lot of people know me for that. What's the toll on the relationship? You mentioned the word relationship there. How does that impact the relationships when it comes to managers, HR leaders, and directors really discussing this transparency, within organizations, so they can navigate, potential concerns or resistance that employees or even managers may have regarding that pay transparency? Do you have any, maybe strategic, thoughts that can be utilized to build that trust and foster that, constructive communication, especially around compensation? Because money sometimes can be very sensitive, especially if George is making one thing and then he hears Sarah's making another thing. Sarah goes and say, hey, John's making a lot more, and we're all in the same area. How do you navigate that to have that communication that's very transparent and also trustworthy?
Yeah, you nailed it in terms of the exact kinds of questions, the dynamic that employers are having to navigate. And you talked about, the question you pose is interesting because it's an opportunity for employers, right? And they can take the opportunity and turn it into a benefit and translate that to a strengthened relationship with employees.
Yes.
But they can also, if you do it wrong, then, the reality is it can hurt your employment brand. And that's the reality. And so I think that different organizations are going to fall in different places on a continuum of just how kind of transparent they want to be behind the scenes with respect to, the activities and the strategies and the programs that they're executing with respect to things like pay equity and opportunity equity. But what we've found just as practitioners supporting employers is that regardless of how much information employers decide to disclose, the important piece is explaining why to employees, right? And so oftentimes people, just as much as they want to know what, they want to know why.
Yeah.
right? And so, we find that employers that focus on that um, and do so based on a kind of foundation of analytical assurance, analytical confidence that they understand what's taking place in the organization. That typically leads to the best, relationship, trust outcomes as employers and employees seek to, really make sure that they're maximizing that relationship. To your point, George.
Yeah. What kind of maybe can be intriguing for those out there that maybe just heard of Trusaic? What kind of case study or something, a story or a follow up from maybe a potential client or a former client or maybe a current situation that could be relatable to the audience today that your company has been able to bring a powerful solution to for one of your clients.
Yeah, great question. A couple come to mind. One is the notion of intersectional analysis in the U.S., right? So the reality is that employees have different shared experiences that are not just a function of their gender or just a function of the race, ethnicity, or other protective categories, demographic categories. The reality is, every person kind of sits at the intersection of a multitude of those different factors. And so for employers that are oftentimes just realizing that there's technology that's available that can help them to perform very robust, sophisticated analyses that takes into account that intersectionality, it can be eye-opening, right? Because now all of a sudden you're stepping into a world where you're able to have a lot more nuanced understanding of the difference in those kind of shared experiences of different demographic categories at those intersections. So I think that's been super interesting over the last couple of years. I think that another piece that comes to mind is with I can't believe it's 2024 already, and COVID is kind of in the rear view. But the reality is that a lot of the kind of fiscal policy stimulus that took place that led to, and combine that with supply chain shocks that led to, what we're seeing still, persistent inflation and a lot of job switching, kind of a little bit of a wage spiral. A lot of organizations are dealing with pay compression issues, right? And so when you think about performing a pay equity analysis and running pay equity analytics in the context of that labor dynamic, labor kind of market reality, oftentimes things that you didn't think would happen, kind of from a macro perspective, can have a massive influence on things like pay equity analytics. And so, as an example. With employee tenure, take that. Let's just think about employee tenure. So a lot of employers historically have used employment tenure as a variable that they control for, right, when performing pay equity analyses. But the problem is when you enter into a position where a significant portion, a non-trivial portion of your workforce is new and has maybe been brought in at much higher rates, and you have another significant portion of your workforce that has experienced kind of the negative side of that pay compression equation, a variable like that has been stalwart, that been able to rely on, from a data perspective, can't really be relied on anymore. And so, it's really, that's kind of a nuanced example, but it shows you kind of the little bit of the complexity and the issues that employers are grappling with as they seek to kind of ensure that the analytics upon which they're basing their decisions, are robust and kind of fit the workforce realities. And so a lot of employers are, maybe they're removing tenure as an explanatory factor in some of the pay equity models that they're running.
One of the things that I often hear when we're discussing with groups, I just got off a HR cruise, and one of the conversations I was having with an attendee there was going back to retention, right? How does pay transparency and this equity, what does it have to do with retention? And I always tell people, listen, there's a couple of key factors that always come back to the ingredients, if you will, of retention. Am I engaged? Do I trust my employer and leaders, right? And is there clarity with the growth and development? And one of the things that I found that stuck out for me, and I want to kind of throw this at you and see what you have in regards to this conversation, because when pay transparency is more for me than a job posting, right? It's more than just posting a job and here's the pay and expectations. One of the things we found at Lighthouse Research and Advisory was that companies that rated highly on pay transparency were 3 times more likely to say employee retention had improved in the last year, right? And so it's the benefits of pay transparency is that there's retention. People want to stay where there's a company where they can trust. Another thing that stuck out when I was sharing this data was, hey, 3.5 times more likely that companies that have high retention and pay transparency are posting this both not just externally but internally as well. Or it's not just internally that we're doing this and sharing it with our people and then sharing something different externally. There's true transparency in those things. When it comes to trends and the effect of this conversation when it comes to retention specifically, what are some other things that you're seeing trend-wise for those people who are saying, we're using Trusaic, we're not going anywhere, we found it impactful, not just to the employees, but to our retention? Can you speak a little bit about the retention factor for those who are saying, how does this impact retention?
Yeah, absolutely, George. I mean, I think you nailed it. When you think about retention, you think about engagement. Trust is just a fundamental part of the equation, and trust is based on the truth, and it's are you telling the truth? Are you telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and not shaving the truth, right? Yeah. And there's one version of the truth. I think that's critical. And so employers that are just really consistent with that internal / versus external kind of posture, I think, are on the right path to building trust. We forget too that if we zoom out, the whole reason why these pay transparency and beyond pay, career and employment transparency reporting and transparency kind of laws are coming online is because we as a society have elected politicians and legislators that reflect the social values of our time, right? And so they are kind of putting into place these reporting and transparency requirements that really are just reflective of the political will of their constituents, right? Us. And so what that tells us is that the market at large, society, employees, applicants, the labor market cares deeply about these issues. It is top of mind, right? There's a variety of polls that are conducted, and if you look at any one of them over the last 3 to 4 years, you'll find that just top of mind for employees is, am I being paid fairly, right? And why, right? So am I being paid fairly? Am I being treated fairly? And I think that employers should be laser focused on this, not just from a kind of regulatory compliance perspective, but the far deeper issue is, am I doing everything that I can to be able to attract, ramp, and retain, and develop world-class talent, particularly as you think about some of the labor market realities that are kind of taking shape with demographic shifts, lower fertility rates. We're kind of stepping into a period where, the labor market is going to shrink dramatically. And, I think I saw a study just a couple of days ago that says by 2030, we're projected to have an 85 million employee shortfall in kind of the broad global labor markets. And so retention does become just mission critical, right? Because it was already expensive to replace, not just from a cost perspective, right, but from a strategic perspective. And that just becomes exacerbated and dramatically augmented by the labor market kind of demographic realities that we're seeing and that are going to take place over the next decade.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit, and specifically, John, from your heart, but also with Trusaic, on the DEI piece, because that's been a lot of conversations as well when it comes to pay transparency. Whether it's how are the differences between a female versus a male pay, that the transparency of, and not just female, but then a black or brown or white, and all those things. How do you guys and ladies, for this matter, take DEI, and how does Trusaic essentially as a company help provide a standard for those organizations and employers that are want to be transparent in regards to the DEI standpoint as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we always think about there's what you say and what employees perceive, and what you do and what employees perceive as a function of that, right? So I think a lot of companies and most people for that matter have very good intentions. And so that enables them to kind of craft policies that allow them to say kind of and take certain positions. But it's on the what you do side of the equation, where employers often run into trouble, right? And a big piece of that, again, is just not having the right tooling, the right process, the right kind of analytics in place to be able to support effective actions. I think that's where we come in, and where we really kind of view our kind of role in this equation and in this ecosystem is enabling organizations to have that analytical visibility into, well, where are those issues, right? Where are women being paid less than men, and what's causing that, right? Is it, were they hired at a certain time? Were they hired by a certain manager, right? Is there kind of, maybe bias training that managers need to go through? And maybe that needs to be kind of focused in one particular part of the organization. But it's really that what you do enabled by, deep and intuitive and powerful analytics, that I think that we focus on, so that employers can marry those two sides, right? What you do and what you say.
That's awesome. If I was to, wrap up here and kind of give you the mic, what's something specifically, I like to ask this question a lot, what's something that's on your heart as we, you mentioned 2024 is here, Q1 is almost done, and we're entering into the Q2 phase. John, what's something that's on your heart specifically that you're very passionate about seeing come to light, whether that's with Trusaic or just something personally that aligns with the vision and mission that your company has? What's something that's been on your heart for 2024 that you're pursuing and excited about?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer that kind of from a professional perspective and then a personal perspective. And thanks for the question, George. I think, professionally, one of the things that, as all these kind of different, new and exciting, but also kind of scary technologies proliferate, right? Things like these large language models and ChatGPT and we're projected to turn into general world models and, artificial general intelligence, et cetera. I think that there's a lot of kind of pessimism and fear about the future. And so, I think that something that I'm really deeply passionate about, and I would say Trusaic is, just generally speaking, and I would love to be able to kind of be a small part of the change with respect to, is changing that narrative, changing the way that we collectively kind of think about the possibilities and the prospects of the future. I think deeply at heart, I'm an optimist. I believe in our ability as a civilization to build a better future, right? And so I think that if we could do things to change that timbre and enable folks to take a more kind of positive, optimistic perspective, and that would be something that would make me really happy. And from a personal perspective, George, in a different life, I was actually a classically trained violinist, and I've been a little rusty over the last 5 to 10 years, and kind of trying to make it a personal mission to reconnect with my old friend, the violin. So.
Awesome. Hey, I haven't touched a keyboard or a drum set in about 1.5 years, 2 years. So I understand that the passion for music, and I can look at it, but I very rarely get some time to just kind of sit down. So I encourage you, man. I hope that you find some time to get back to the violin. If someone was to want to connect with you and learn more about Trusaic, can you share that information with the audience?
Absolutely. Yep. So our website is www.trusaic.com. That's TRUSAIC.com. we have tons of resources that are available there and contact information. And if anyone would like to email me directly, I love getting questions and engaging with the business community at large. And my email is jford@trusaic.com. So that's jford@trusaic.com.
Awesome. And one last word. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share at all, John, as we wrap up?
No, George, it's been a pleasure. We really respect and appreciate and admire what you guys are doing, and just happy to be a part of the conversation. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Awesome. Appreciate you as well. And I'm sure the audience is grateful for your time. John, until next time, I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much, George.
Likewise. Awesome. So a lot there. I wish we had more time to really dig into some more questions there. Maybe we can bring John back later on this year and pick his brain as well as a team over at Trusaic. Awesome company. I encourage you, as he said, visit the website, get more information. I'll drop the link in the chat here below. And as always, we appreciate everybody joining us. Just to recap, just a reminder, as always, make sure you go to hrtechtalks.org. To be notified of our future conversations that we'll have with companies just like we had today with Mr. John from Trusaic, and also get more information, previous recordings that you can check out as well, more information on that as well. Also, hrtechawards.org, hrtechawards.org. Become a company just like Trusaic, award winner from 2023. Great company and software company that you can use. Again, if you're looking for any pay equity, transparency to help out your organization, I encourage you to check out Trusaic as well. And also coming up, I will be forgetting this, but I want to invite everybody to join me and my good friend Ben Eubanks April the 3rd. April 3rd, Ben and I will be joining our awesome sponsor and also discussing some recent updates and recent research that we'll be releasing, kind of similar to the conversation today. Talent acquisition, recruiting, some transparency there. What is happening? What we are seeing? What are the latest trends? Some of the trends that we're seeing is more than just about transparency for the candidates and what they care about. But some of those top things that they do care about is pay transparency, workplace flexibility, training, and growth opportunities as well. Some other things we'll be talking about on April the 3rd is globally, the set of candidates' top priorities have shifted a little bit. In North America, pay is number one. In Europe, we're seeing that smooth application process is the top priority. In the Asian Pacific area, career advancement is number one. So we'll discuss a lot of those things and more. April the 3rd, you can find more information out by visiting lhra.io/24TA. Again, you can see that on the ticker below as well. We'd love for you to join us as well. We'll have HRCI and SHRM credits approved for that 2.5-hour session. So join us if you will, and we appreciate it as always. Until next time, my friend, always remember, your best is yet to come. Keep on pushing forward and doing great things within your organization and lead the life you love.